Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror comedy from the United States, English language, released in the year 2010, directed by Matthew Roth, and this film is called The Man Who Collected Food. So The Man Who Collected Food is about a very strange individual, and he passes his time by collecting new editions of food on the supermarket shelves. So he takes them home, he doesn't eat them, he puts them up on display, and he just marvels at them. So a lot of people think he's strange, but what a lot of people don't realise is that he has a dark secret that's terrifying. So he doesn't eat the food, but he has other ways to satisfy his appetite, which directly puts the people outside of his life in grave danger. So whether or not his secret can be uncovered in time is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Man Who Collected Food. Because the subject of comedy is so subjective, this is the movie that was very hard for me to review, is that I didn't really gravitate to this film at all. But if you find this style of humour funny, then you're going to have a completely different experience. And so it's definitely a movie that you have to check out for yourself as to whether or not you liked it. But I'm basing this movie on what it did to me, and unfortunately I saw a lot more negatives than I did positives. Now the positives to the film is that at least Matthew Roth is trying something different. It's very outlandish, it's very quirky, but in a world of generic remakes and movies that don't take risks, these sorts of directors need to be encouraged. This is a lower budget movie, but he's not afraid to push the envelope as far as traditional storytelling is concerned. So this is a film that, although it's so outlandish, there were still elements in this movie that I could connect to. So the concepts of this film are very, very interesting and worth thinking about. Is that the concept of collecting. Now, whether it's food collecting or movie collecting, anyone who's a collector can get the sense of what this main character was feeling. And that's something that took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting any relatability to this character in a film of this nature. And so this is a film that I actually got a sense of what's happened to me, is that the outside people are looking at this main character as a weirdo, saying, how can a collection make you happy? But if you are a collector, you know exactly how a collection can make you happy, whether it's food collecting or, for me, it's movie collecting. And when I see a new release of a film I've been looking forward to, I want to rush out and buy it. And people say, why don't you just watch it on Netflix? I need that hardcover. I need the DVD in my hands, and it's something that only a collector would understand. So other people think you're weird, but people who understand what you're going through don't necessarily think you're that weird person. And so although I thought it was strange that he was collecting food, I could understand why he was collecting, why he was so happy to see new editions of his collection. And so that was a very strange sort of relatability that I had with this main character. And you've also got the concept of food consumption. Now, I'm not going to give away too much on my thoughts on this concept, because I believe it'll give it away, but that was very interesting to look at as well. And once again, different strokes for different folks, as they say. And so it's definitely, the concepts of the film are the best aspects of this movie, because it actually makes you think. And that's something I really wasn't expecting, and that's something that I definitely have to applaud the director for doing, is because although this movie is extremely silly, there are moments that I thought, okay, well, that kind of works. And so that's something I appreciated. And I also appreciated the shocking violence that the film has, is that it really took me by surprise. So you do have the alleviated sort of comedic aspects that make it very lighthearted, but then all of a sudden you're shocked with the really shocking acts of violence. And so that brings the dark aspect of the horror genre into it as well. But unfortunately, putting those positives aside, I believe that the negatives were far more greater, because of the fact I believe this movie wasn't very natural. Now, yes, it's very, very outlandish, it's very, very quirky, but it's trying way too hard to be funny. Is that it's very juvenile attempts, and I believe that the movie really needed a better script, because the script became irritating after a while, and by the halfway stage, all the interesting concepts were forgotten, because I was becoming irritated. Therefore, as the movie progressed from the halfway stage, I was becoming more and more disconnected from the experience. And by the end of the film, I was just looking at my watch wanting it to finish, because it irritated me. It was very cringeworthy. I thought the characters that come into the film, yes, I kind of thought, all right, at the start of the movie it's quirky, but am I going to get absorbed into the quirkiness? But unfortunately, it just doesn't work. It's because it's trying way too hard to give you a laugh. It's not a scary film. Yes, there's shocking acts of violence, but it's not scary because it's so silly. And because it's so silly, it loses that fear factor. And because it's so silly and trying too hard, it loses the comedic factor. So as far as a horror comedy is concerned, it just fails in a lot of aspects. And I thought that the editing towards the end becomes gradually worse. There were moments where I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that wasn't supposed to happen. And that is down to the fact that I just thought more attention needed to be put upon this film. And so the editing wasn't great. The cinematography wasn't great. I know it's a lower budget movie, but there have been lower budget films out there that have made brilliant experiences, but this movie just can't quite do that because it's not natural enough. I thought, as I said, it needed a better comedic script, and it just needed a little bit more, it needed to calm down a little bit because it got to a point where it was a complete caricature, and unfortunately that caricature was very annoying, so it outstayed its welcome well before the end. But as I said, the interesting concepts prevent it from being a complete disaster, so I would say if you can come across it, then check it out if you like weird movies. If you're into this kind of humour, maybe you'll get a completely different experience. You know, comedy is subjective, and ultimately movie reviewing is subjective, but for me it just didn't work. It fell flat, and unfortunately that's the reason why it's not coming recommended. So overall, for The Man Who Collected Food, it gets way too silly for its own good. I'm only going to give this one 1 star. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.